The day my daughter lost her baby, she lost something else too. Not loudly. Not all at once. It slipped away quietly, like hope does when it realizes it isn't welcome. I watched her stand in my kitchen, stirring a cup of tea she never drank, apologizing for resting too long, for crying too softly, for not being useful. That word stayed with me. Useful. As if grief were a task she'd failed to complete. People expect loss to look dramatic. Screaming. Collapsing. Breaking down. But sometimes grief wears clean clothes, speaks gently, and tries desperately not to take up space. I didn't yet know that a sentence had already been spoken. A sentence so calm, so cruel it didn't even sound like hatred. A sentence that would end a marriage, and quietly dismantle the man who said it. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't confront him. I chose the truth instead. Hi, I'm Margaret Hale. And this is my story. My daughter didn't arrive with bags. That was the first thing I noticed. No suitcase, no overnight tote. Just her purse held tightly against her chest, like it was the only thing anchoring her. She stood in my doorway hesitating, the way people do when they aren't sure they're allowed to need help. I won't stay long, she said quickly. Just tonight. As if grief obeyed schedules. I hugged her and she felt hollow, not thin but emptied. Like something essential had been removed and never returned. We sat at the kitchen table where she'd once done homework, where she'd laughed and argued as a teenager. Now she sat with her hands folded in her lap, shoulders tense, eyes lowered. She apologized for everything. For the silence. For the mess she hadn't made. For being tired. I'll help you tomorrow, she said suddenly. I don't want to be lazy. Lazy. After losing a child. That night, I lay awake listening to her breathe in the guest room. Mothers never stop counting breaths. I wondered what kind of home sends a grieving woman back to her childhood house asking permission to rest. In the morning, I noticed the bruises on her arms, hospital marks from 4 lines and needles. Proof of pain. No one congratulates you for surviving. I made her eggs. She ate 2 bites, then pushed the plate away. I'm sorry, she whispered. That was when it hit me sharp and cold. Someone had taught my daughter that grief was a failure. And I was about to find out who. He came by that afternoon with paperwork. Insurance forms. Hospital bills. Documents full of boxes and numbers, as if loss could be organized neatly. I stayed in the hallway while they spoke in the living room, giving them space, or so I thought. He didn't lower his voice. It's not like she was doing much anyway, he said casually. I mean, now that she can't even carry a pregnancy. What is she contributing right now? My body went still. She's just useless at the moment, he added, letting out a small laugh. I'm trying to be patient, but this can't go on forever. Useless. Not shouted. Not said in anger. Spoken like a conclusion. My daughter said nothing. She stared at the floor, shoulders drawn in, as if she'd learned long ago that silence was safer than defense. I stood frozen, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure it would give me away. Then I stepped into the room, smiled, and asked if he wanted tea. My voice didn't shake. My face didn't change. He looked relieved. Men like him always mistake politeness for agreement. That moment clarified everything. He didn't think he was cruel. He thought he was being honest. After he left, my daughter asked softly, "Are you okay, Mom?" "I'm fine," I said. And for the first time I truly was, because I had made a decision. I wouldn't confront him. I wouldn't warn him. I would let the truth finish the sentence he had started. Miscarriage doesn't just take a baby. It takes language. My daughter struggled to describe what she felt, so she borrowed words others had given her. Failure, weakness, inconvenience. I watched her fold laundry that was already clean, answer emails no one expected responses to, exhaust herself trying to prove she still mattered. One night she whispered, "Maybe my body just doesn't work right." I told her bodies don't fail. People fail bodies. She looked at me then, really looked, and something opened. The stories came slowly. Comments he'd made over the years. About timing. About stress. About how she needed to stay healthy. If she wanted to be valuable. "The doctor said it wasn't my fault," she murmured. "But he said doctors just say that to comfort women." I held her like I used to when she was small. Guilt crept in quietly. How many times had I mistaken her silence for strength? That night I wrote everything down. Dates. Phrases. The exact way he said useless. Documentation isn't revenge. It's memory. It's protection against being told later that it never happened. By morning I understood something clearly. This wasn't about grief. This was about control. And control always leaves a trail. Once she started talking, years unraveled. He corrected her stories in public. Joked about her emotions. Managed finances because she was too sensitive for numbers. Nothing loud. Nothing obvious. Just steady erosion. I thought this was normal, she said quietly. Marriage is compromise. Compromise. Another word women use when they mean disappearance. The miscarriage didn't change him. It exposed him. Without the promise of a child, her value to him dropped sharply, and he stopped pretending otherwise. I remember dinners where he praised her cooking while criticizing the seasoning. Times he'd said, "I worry about her stability," with a smile that invited agreement. People like him don't fear emotion. They fear exposure. I asked her one question. If your daughter told you this story, what would you say? She went quiet. She stayed with me. No announcements. No fights. Just removal. He didn't notice she was gone for 3 days. That told me everything. Paper has a way of speaking when people think it can't. While my daughter slept late into the afternoon, exhausted in the way only grief can exhaust a person, I sat at the dining table with a folder he had dropped off so casually. Insurance forms. Hospital invoices. Leave applications. All the debris that follows loss. At first glance it looked ordinary. Practical. Responsible. That's how he liked to appear. But the longer I read, the more something tightened in my chest. His signature appeared everywhere. Authorizations, approvals, confirmations. My daughter's name was present, but her handwriting rarely was. One form, dated during the week she was hospitalized, caught my attention. A benefits adjustment. It limited coverage for extended recovery, citing non-essential leave. Non-essential. I read the line again, slower this time. I thought about the 4 marks on her arms. The blood loss. The doctor's careful instructions. I thought about her apologizing for being tired. Another document followed. A brief email exchange with his company's HR department. He had described the situation as temporary domestic instability, emphasizing his reliability, his need to remain fully available at work. Not once did he mention her condition, only the inconvenience. I didn't feel anger then. I felt clarity. I began copying everything, front and back. Dates. Attachments. I labeled each page carefully, the way I used to organize my daughter's school papers when she was young. Before dinner, I called an old friend who worked in compliance. I didn't accuse. I didn't dramatize. I asked quiet questions. Her pause was long. Keep everything, she said finally. And don't let him know you're looking. I hung up and stared at the paper spread before me. Truth, I realized, was already written down. It only needed to be placed in the right hands. He came back 3 days later with flowers. White lilies, neatly wrapped, the kind people bring when they want to look respectful without thinking too hard. He held them like proof of effort. "I'm sorry if what I said came out wrong," he began, standing in my living room. "I've just been under a lot of pressure." Pressure. Not grief. Not remorse. Pressure. He spoke carefully, as if every word had been rehearsed on the drive over. He talked about moving forward, about how staying stuck wasn't healthy, about how my daughter needed to regain her routine. His voice softened when he noticed me watching, adjusted itself into something almost gentle. "She knows I care," he said. "I just want her to be strong again." Strong. Another word that often means silent. My daughter sat beside me, hands folded, nodding occasionally. I recognized that nod. It was the same one she used as a child when she wanted a conversation to end without conflict. After he left, the lilies still standing untouched on the counter, she asked, "Do you think he meant it?" I chose my words carefully. I think he meant to protect himself. That night we packed only essentials. Clothes. Documents. Medication. Nothing sentimental. Nothing heavy. Leaving wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, deliberate, and temporary, at least on paper. He texted later asking where she was. I replied simply, "She's resting." He didn't ask where. He didn't ask how long. That was when I understood something important. He believed rest was something she owed him an explanation for. And that belief would be his undoing. Protection came first. Everything else could wait. The days settled into a quiet rhythm. Therapy appointments twice a week. Follow-up visits with her doctor. Long afternoons where she slept without apologizing for it. Healing, I learned, is not inspiring to watch. It's repetitive, uneventful, necessary. While my daughter focused on surviving, I focused on observing. His messages shifted in tone over the weeks. First irritation, short, clipped texts about responsibilities. Then concern, carefully worded. Then confusion. He couldn't understand why she wasn't responding the way she always had. One voicemail stopped me cold. "She needs to decide what she's contributing," he said, frustration seeping through his controlled voice. "This can't stay one-sided." I saved it immediately. I added it to the file I'd been building. Emails, documents, voice recordings, dates carefully noted, patterns becoming impossible to ignore. When the time felt right, not rushed, not delayed, I submitted the information. No accusations, no emotional language, just documentation. I framed it as concern. Concern for procedure, for ethics, for accuracy. The system responded the way systems always do when faced with evidence. Silence. Not dismissal. Not outrage. Silence, the kind that means wheels are turning behind closed doors. I didn't tell my daughter right away. She needed stability, not anticipation. I waited until she slept through the night without waking from panic. Only then did I allow myself to acknowledge it. The truth was moving now, and it didn't need my voice anymore. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon, unremarkable in every way. No raised voices. No dramatic language. "We're reviewing some inconsistencies," the woman said. "The information you provided was helpful." Helpful. That was the word she used. She didn't explain further. She didn't need to. The pause at the end of the sentence told me enough. I thanked her and hung up, my hands steady, my heart surprisingly calm. I had imagined this moment would feel heavier. Instead, it felt clean, like setting something down after carrying it too long. That evening, my phone rang again. His name appeared on the screen. He didn't waste time. "Margaret," he said, trying for politeness. "Something strange is happening at work. Did you talk to someone?" I waited a beat before answering. I told the truth. The silence stretched. "This could damage my reputation," he said finally. "Not my marriage. Not your daughter. My reputation." I thought about the word useless. How easily he'd spoken it. How permanent it had sounded. "Then you should have chosen your words more carefully," I replied. He started to say something else, softer now, but I ended the call. For the first time, he had no control over the conversation. No leverage. No audience. That night, my daughter sat beside me on the couch and asked quietly, "Is it over?" I shook my head. "It started." She nodded, accepting that answer the way people do when they've learned patience through pain. Outside, the house settled into silence. Inside, something irreversible had begun. Consequences never arrive the way people imagine. There were no dramatic phone calls. No shouting. No sudden collapse. There was an investigation. A mandatory leave of absence. Meetings he couldn't attend. Doors that closed without explanation. Trust disappeared first. That's always how it happens. He sent messages late at night. Long ones, carefully written. Apologies threaded with justification. Regret mixed with blame. He said he'd been misunderstood. That stress had made him speak poorly. That he never meant harm. I didn't respond. My daughter read some of the messages, then asked me to delete them. "I don't need to hear him explain himself anymore," she said. Her voice was steady. That steadiness mattered more than anything happening to him. One afternoon she said, "I thought it would feel louder." I understood what she meant. People expect justice to make noise. Truth doesn't shout, I told her. It just removes places for lies to stand. The days passed. Information traveled the way it always does, quietly, through whispers, through absence, through unanswered emails. He was still employed, still housed, still breathing, but he was no longer untouchable. And that was the end of the man he believed himself to be. He moved out of their home under the pretense of space. Temporary, he said. Necessary. No timeline offered. No plan shared. Friends stopped calling him. Not all at once. One by one. Invitations failed to arrive. Conversations grew shorter. Reputation doesn't shatter. It erodes. I saw him once at the grocery store. He stood in the produce aisle staring at apples, unmoving. He looked smaller somehow. Uncertain. Like someone who had lost the script he'd memorized for years. Our eyes met briefly. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it. I nodded once. Not in forgiveness, not in anger. Simply acknowledgement. We passed each other without a word. That night, my daughter asked if I felt satisfied. I considered the question carefully. I feel finished, I said. There's a difference. Healing didn't announce itself. It arrived in fragments. One morning, my daughter slept past sunrise and didn't apologize. Another day, she ate a full meal without pushing the plate away. Small things. Ordinary things. One afternoon, she laughed short, surprised, as if the sound startled her as much as it did me. She covered her mouth afterward, then shook her head. I forgot what that felt like, she said. She began speaking differently, without qualifiers, without explaining herself. I'm not ready, she said once when someone asked about the future, and she didn't soften it. Watching her reclaim that space felt like witnessing something sacred. Not victory. Recovery. He faded further into irrelevance. Updates came indirectly. Muted. Unimportant. For the first time, her life was not shaped by his reactions. That was the real ending. People have asked why I didn't confront him directly. Why I didn't demand apologies or force a reckoning. Because confrontation feeds ego. Truth starves it. I didn't need him to admit anything. His words were already recorded. His choices already documented. His pattern already clear. My daughter survived. She learned that grief is not failure, and rest is not weakness. She learned that silence can be a choice, not a punishment. As for him, he lives with the sentence he spoke so casually. Useless. Not because I said it, because the truth removed everything he used to hide behind. I live with peace, and that is enough.